All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. To introduce myself, I'm Alex. I am the co-founder of Omniscient Digital, content and SEO agency, and the host of this Office Hours series. And I'm stoked to watch and learn from today's presentation all about content calendars. So as you're rolling in, we're going to start in a couple minutes. But as you're rolling in, I would love it if you could state your name, where you're based. Tell me about the weather where you're based. I think that's fun this time of the year. It's usually depressing, even in Austin, Texas, where I am. And then an icebreaker question that everybody can answer, if you will. Tell us, what is one skill that you think everybody should have? So I'll go first. My name is Alex Burkett. Oh, you can say your title and company too. That's always fun. So co-founder at Omniscient Digital. I'm based in Austin, Texas. It's like 45 degrees and rainy today, which is not why I moved here. And what is one skill that everybody should have? Everybody is including more than just marketers. I think it's got to be something, sounds trite, but listening, active listening. Because I think most people they've rarely experienced when somebody is fully actively engaged and present and listening to what they're saying without thinking about what they're going to say next. There's this quote, there's a ton of great quotes from Fight Club, but I remember early on in the movie, the narrator and Marla go to all these like AA meetings and cancer patient meetings and whatnot. And there was a quote, I think Marla said, it was something like, when people think you're dying, they really, really listen instead of thinking about what they're going to say next. And I think that's jarring for people. And it's such an amazing skill that enriches your life in every way. So that is mine. And yeah, I'll do some housekeeping. I'll do some housekeeping in a bio and then we'll kick off. So today's workshop is going to be recorded, shared with slides. It's going to be interactive, which is going to be a lot of fun. If you have any questions, which you will have questions, use the Q&A button at the bottom right of your window to submit the question. We'll address them at the end and probably in between too. I know Ariel has a couple sections that are going to be interactive that you can ask Q&A for that specific section. So without further ado, Ariel Kimberovsky is the head of marketing at Balsamiq, the fastest, most focused, low-fidelity wireframing tool. With a strong foundation in content marketing, Ariel has driven standout growth and brand results across B2C and B2B companies like M1, Vote.org, and more. In this interactive workshop, you'll learn how to create an efficient, customer-focused content calendar that actually works for your startup, that you actually use. So this means a calendar that's goals-focused, easy to maintain, and as flexible as you need it to be. This workshop's not just going to be slides and a template that worked for somebody else, but we're going to go through real examples and hands-on exercises that will actually get you started. And you'll learn how to roll it out, whether you're a team of one or many. All right, Ariel, take it away.
Thanks, Alex. I think that you can do all my intros from now on because you make me sound so much cooler. Hi, everybody. I'm here to teach you how to build a content calendar that works for your startup. That's me. You just heard a little bit about me. You heard a little bit about Balsamiq, but I've been doing the content calendar thing for a while. I've been doing the content thing for a while, and I'm actually about 2 months into Balsamiq. So I'm right there with you. Whether you're building your first calendar, you're revisiting how it's already been, or you're starting from scratch, I'm about to build one for Balsamiq too. And so this stuff is really fresh and top of mind for me as well. So today's plan, we're going to talk about why you're here, because I find workshops best when you go into them with a purpose in mind. We're going to cover the prep work because, believe it or not, you can't just wake up one day and do a content calendar. We'll cover how to build one. We'll look at some examples and hopefully we'll share some of our work. We'll go through some questions. I really want this to be interactive and to make sure that you get the most of this, and so it feels very office hours-y. So let's talk about why you're here. Do content calendars make you feel like this? Because some days when I think about it, I feel exactly like this. So if you're feeling like this, or if you're feeling a little bit better, but you just want to touch it up, here's a content calendar 101. A content calendar is a written plan of when and where you plan to publish content. It's multi-channel, so think social platforms, email, blog, etc. Now, some bigger teams or even some smaller teams might choose to have a separate email calendar, a separate social media calendar, a separate blog calendar. That's cool. You can do whatever system works for you. I've found that they are honestly most helpful when you put them all in one place. They're complementary to your strategy. They're kind of like your execution plan, but they're not your strategy and they're not necessarily your product management. It really is a calendar of content. And then it's full of original content, partnerships, promotions, whatever you've got going out in the public. And it's often a collaborative tool. Even if you're a person of one dealing with your content calendar, my guess is someone else might look at it, provide feedback. Maybe you'll share it with a founder friend if you're solo, or you work with teammates. It's not to be confused with your strategy. It's not something that you have to have jam-packed in order to be full. It's a total myth that you need a piece of content going out every day on every single channel. And it's not in need of over-engineering or over-categorizing. There are a lot of options with how you can look at content. You just have to pick the one that works for you. And it's not one size fits all. Content calendars can help you hold you and your team accountable for publishing work. It can increase visibility across teams so that not just the people working on content can see it. It keeps lots of pieces and channels organized. It helps you avoid overlap, duplication, and competing content. It finds opportunities for more distribution. It keeps you relevant to what's going on in the real world. And honestly, in my opinion, it gives all of your ideas a relevant home where they can go out into the world and help you grow. I would love to hear in the chat, what's one thing you're hoping to get out of today's workshop? What's the intention for today? I know we're still doing intros, but I'd love to hear because we can do a little bit of tailoring too as we go through this. A template would be super helpful. I link to lots of templates at the end. How to organize content so it's not monotonous, add in partnerships, more details about creating an effective content calendar. Yep, that's true. A lot of people think about content calendars and they just put everything as much as they can out there, and that doesn't mean it's effective. Operationalize the social calendar. It's feeling a bit chaotic as to how you plan it with lots of people. A content calendar for those who have multiple jobs. Ooh, that one's interesting. You might need a tool that layers in different lists, tailoring content for different platforms, how to note status of the production steps, hoping to see someone else's detailed process. Always love looking over the shoulder from another expert. I do too. I belong to a bunch of Slack groups, and my favorite thing is when I can ask someone from another company, like Lyft or another startup or another solo founder, hey, what does yours look like? Cool. These are all great intentions. Hold on to that intention. And as we go through this, keep that in mind. And that's kind of where you're starting all your exercises. So if you're focused on how to make it simple, clear, easy to follow, and not overwhelming, every single step of the way, keep it simple. So before you make a content calendar, you actually have to do the prep work. So some of the goals that I'm seeing in the chat are also a little bit of strategy goals, like a little bit of tailoring content for different platforms, a little bit content calendar, a little bit strategy, right? There's some of how to create content so that it's not monotonous and adding in partnerships, a little bit of variety with the calendars, but a little bit of strategy. You have to be prepared. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in creating all these things in different colors and filters, and it's too much. I'm sure some of us have been there. So with that, you usually start with goals. What are your content goals? Why do you need a content calendar in the first place? I'd love for you to type in the chat. When you think about goals, think about how it supports your business. So as you're thinking and you're typing in the chat, hopefully because you're seeing other people have things in common with you, I'll share one of ours at Balsamiq. One of our content goals is to educate people. We call our content education, and it helps partially with the brand. We want to be seen as thought leaders and experts in the design space. We want it to help our mission of getting rid of bad user experiences and creating good ones. And then the other part is growth. We want to use content to generate awareness, demand, and get people to convert and buy. Okay, let's look at some of these goals. Social is a strong driver of new clients for me that I'm not leveraging well. Cool. Generate qualified leads and pipeline, build trust and credibility, boost engagement. Without goals, the content has no focus/audience and is too hard to execute. I agree. To educate and create awareness, for sure. education on mental wellness for my wellness stationery brand to create a signal for my various projects. This is great. When you have a goal, you automatically know some things. If you are focused on, I just want to educate people on mental wellness, you don't want to have too many promotions in there, right? So now you're starting to think of the types of content that you have ideas, why you need a calendar in the first place, what you're really trying to do here. So before you build, you start with goals. So you all have your goals. So hopefully that connects to strategy. If you don't already have a strategy, you're going to define your audience. You'll research your audience's pain points, online behaviors, needs, opinions, etc. If that sounds holy cow overwhelming, my guess is you probably know some of them if you know your audience. And if you don't, talk to a customer or two. Choose your core topics and categories, right? If it's mental wellness or if it's a different type of thing, right? If it's content marketing, you might have a category like calendar, strategy, execution, right? Different categories. You might have one that's promotion. Choose your channels. If you're really great and fast at video, TikTok might be good. If the thought of video is horrifying to you, maybe you stick to LinkedIn and Twitter. Maybe you stick to blog posts. So think of the channels that you can be on and where your audience is. Decide how often you'll publish per channel. Define how you'll measure performance against goals. Choose your tools and start generating lists of content ideas pieces, right? You'll need those lists before you build a content calendar. I'm seeing some more hopes too, how to track multiple elements that go into one piece of content, like an email newsletter. We can talk about all those things for sure. But before you build a calendar, you need a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, if you go straight to a calendar, you're probably going to feel a little bit overwhelmed. And your strategy can be as simple or as detailed as you have the time for. So based on that list, what part of prep feels done? What's missing? I can float back to that list. What feels done? And what feels like it's missing? So I'll give you an example. One thing that's pretty good at Balsamiq is I feel like we have the beginnings of a good handle on goals. We're starting to decide on how we might measure them, like with awareness, with traffic numbers, with impressions. But we have to do some customer research because while we do ongoing research, we want to really understand who we're going to focus on. Okay, someone says nothing is done. Audience, that I know. If you have audience, you're in a really good place. You know who you're talking to. Now you just need to know what happens in the business, and then we connect content to it. Usually, content is going to connect to helping your business grow, to help more people hear about you, or to help more people love your brand and buy. So that's probably where you want to focus, but it depends. Research audience pain points, needs, and feedback. I feel most shaky about how to measure performance, what metrics I should be looking at. There are tons of amazing resources. I know Omniscient Digital even has some great resources on focusing on your strategy, +1 to metrics. These are things that are really easy to get lost in and over-engineer. You do need to know them before you build your content calendar because otherwise you don't know why you're posting when you're posting it, and that's going to make it feel a little bit stressful. I'll give you a quick example before we move on. If your goal is to grow your business, do you need to get more customers or do you need to get your current customers to buy from you? Let's say you need to get more customers. Cool. You need to talk to them about things they care about, maybe in that mental wellness space. Cool. Maybe the first step of that is getting people aware that you exist. So you're going to look at traffic. Then the next step is conversions. Shouldn't the metrics be signups, downloads, the bottom line, or do I need to define a top of funnel? It depends on your business. Maybe you're really just focused on conversions and that's where it is. Some people are focused more on word of mouth. Thanks, Alex, for sharing that resource. So this is a great resource in the chat if you're looking. You've got to build your strategy before you build your calendar, because if you're confused on what you're looking for, you're not going to know what you should be doing and when. And if part of this is missing, schedule some time to fill it in. 30 minutes, an hour, half a day, 20 minutes. Pick your time. We're not perfect, especially if you're on a small team or solo. Schedule it in and you'll be good to go. Then you can build your calendar. It's not about perfection. It's just about progress. You just want to be set up so that you're not in a place where you're trying to pull random ideas and put them out there and manage a really large program that you don't even know why you're doing in the first place. It's all about efficiency and efficacy. Now we get into how to actually build your content calendar. You've done your prep work, you have your strategy, you kind of know what you're doing, now you have to do it. These are the main steps. We're going to break each of them down. You're going to identify any holidays, cultural moments, events you should be aware of from a brand or audience point of view. I'll give you an example. March Madness can be a big one for some companies, totally irrelevant for others. Christmas might be really important for some retailers. It might be totally not important to a software tool, right? So you kind of just have to know what people are going to care about. Then you'll schedule your must-haves first. You'll identify big topics and campaigns. You'll create your scratchpad lists under each big topic and campaign. This is something very few people will teach you how to do. You'll choose a tool. I know we're all about the tools. You'll fill in spots on your calendar. You'll add any requests or leave space for requests. You're not going to overcommit yourself. And then you'll create or assign to-dos wherever it makes sense for you to. Start with a blank doc or pen and paper. My advice is you want this now because we're going to get a little interactive. I'm going to push you to do a few of these things. If all your prep work isn't done, that's okay. Do as much of this today as you can and then go back. And then I'm looking at the chat. How much time are we looking at for step 1, goal setting? If you're trying to goal set for your business, you might want to spend a little bit more time on it when you think about how content connects. Start with an hour or 2 and see how far you get. My vote is when you're busy and you're strapped for time box yourself, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, see where you get, see where that gets you, add more time as needed. If you start to get overwhelmed by thinking you need a day or a whole quarterly like other companies do it, maybe you have that time, maybe you don't. Do what you can. But for right now, start with a blank doc or a pen and paper. Step number 1, identify cultural moments, events, think holidays, brand days, competitor campaigns, major events that are happening. These are the big things that you just want to keep in mind, right? You don't want to forget that it's insert holiday here that's really important and be talking about something totally irrelevant on social media. So type in the chat, what's one cultural moment or event coming up in the next month or 2 that's relevant to your brand? Whether it's end of January, maybe it's February or March. I'm curious. And if nothing's top of mind, then that's okay. Just say nothing. Valentine's, Admin Day, Black History Month, tax deadlines. We're going to try to leverage March Madness. This is great. So these are things that you want to put on your calendar, not as something like you're not running the March Madness content campaign, but you want to be aware of it so that all your March Madness type content goes in that area. So cool. Write these down. Black History Month, we've got lots of relevant ones. Something you don't want to do is leverage every month and holiday just because. For example, we are not going to talk about tax deadlines at Balsamiq. Makes no sense. We're not a financial tool. We're not a tax tool. We are a software tool that helps you do wireframes and simple designs. So you have to pick and choose. Step number 2 is schedule your must-haves. Talk to your teams, look through upcoming work, start on paper and make a list. You'll transfer it to your tool of choice later. But think about things like your product release blog post, webinar event you have with a partner, like, these office hours with Omniscient Digital, a conference you're sponsoring, a pre-planned influencer campaign. What's one must-have coming up in the next 1 to 2 months? Write it down. I know at Balsamiq, we're going to have a product launch in the next few months. Probably more like the next 3, but lost me completely here. Okay, so this is something like a product launch or a partnership that you agreed to. It's not just a blog post idea, it's something that you've committed to. Your product team is releasing something it's Valentine's Day and you are going to have a new basket. Exactly. So if it's based on holiday events, maybe these two are one step for you. This is where you have to pick and choose the steps that really work for you. Don't get caught in the method. If this doesn't make sense to you, if you're like there's nothing relevant, cool, there's nothing relevant. We move on. A fundraising round closed blog post. Great. You know you're going to close a funding round, you know you have to post about it. Put it there right away on your list. Big virtual summit. It's a great example. You're starting to plan content around that. Then you're going to identify big topics and campaigns. You're doing a brainstorm list right now. So you can use pen and paper, again, a simple tool. So some example topics that maybe we'd use for Balsamiq is learn to wireframe, wireframing best practices, design thinking. All of our ideas are going to fit into these topics. These are pulled from strategy. But when we think about what you're going to do with campaign ideas, this might look like an idea for a blog post for you. It might not be a whole campaign. It might be, I have an idea that I'm going to write an article about why mental wellness is really important for coffee drinkers, for example. Totally random, but it's an idea. Maybe it connects to your business, right? And so you'll start writing down all of the big things that you want to talk about. So, for example, you've got a big virtual summit coming up in March. Maybe in February, you want to be talking all about content strategy and teaching founders about content strategy. These are the things you want to talk about. If your business is totally seasonal, it looks like some of yours are, then maybe Valentine's Day is your whole focus and you've got different topics in there. You've got a new product coming out around Valentine's Day that you want to talk about. You want to talk about gift giving around Valentine's Day. You want to talk about decorating around Valentine's Day. You want to talk about how to make someone feel special during Valentine's Day. Those are your big topics. If you need help identifying topics, I think some of you mentioned this, content should educate, entertain, inspire, or promote. It's got to do one of those things to get someone to stop and look. So you can think about things like what performed well in the past? What did you do? Were there eyeballs on it? What your audience craves. Has a customer recently told you they'd really love to learn about this, or your support team has mentioned all your customers are asking about this topic? Your opinions on the industry. Maybe you think something very specific about Valentine's Day and you want to share. Company and product updates. Maybe your company is handling tax season in a very different way, and that's a story. Write down your 3 to 5 core topics. Share them in the chat if you want. 3 things that you can talk about, probably based on the 2 that you previously listed. I'll give you an example. At Balsamiq, we talk a lot about wireframing for product managers. So like those simple design sketches, if you're designing a website or something, that might be one topic. Why diversity of software teams leads to better products. That's a great topic. From that, you might generate a bunch of different content ideas. So these are your core topics. This is helping you get more specific. You're going to start to create scratch pad lists. Content strategy, B2B demand generation, SEO, these are all great. Create scratch pad lists. Pull these lists from your brain, campaign strategy docs, subject matter experts, backlogs. For example, if one of your big topics is content strategy, suddenly you're going to have a bunch of ideas under that. One of our big topics is learn to wireframe. We teach beginners how to wireframe. So for example, 5 steps to creating great wireframes. Balsamiq is Zenware. What is Zenware and why you should design with it? How Balsamiq helps you find your Zen. All this is you're generating your ideas. If you already have a bunch of ideas, cool. If you're struggling to come up with ideas, again, do some Googling, see what other people are doing, talk to your customers. One idea can be distributed many times. So start with one idea. For example, a blog post on how to create great wireframes, wireframing for beginners. We want to educate people on good design and build awareness. So there are metrics, impressions, traffic. We are focused on wireframing newbies, people that are new to those simple sketches of websites. And then you can promote the idea. You can share the post on social media and in your newsletter. You can share it as a LinkedIn post with an article link. You can shorten the blog post as a long LinkedIn post. So for example, that one blog post, you can now share 2 times on LinkedIn in maybe 2 separate weeks. Once with a caption and the article link, and once with 2 or 3 paragraphs pulled out and separate. And you can break it up. Maybe you shared some examples of great wireframes in this blog post. You can make them separate mini videos. Maybe you make them an email series. Maybe you highlight one of them in a newsletter every week. These ideas are hidden in things that you've already created. So hopefully this helps you. If you're thinking efficiency and speed and I'm managing so many things, or I don't have a big team, pick your big idea and see how many little ideas are in it. Not everybody needs a whole blog post every single time. Sometimes shorter things are okay. Write down one content idea you have and the category it connects to. What are 2 more ways it can be shared? A lot of people do this from like a blog post topic or just a big idea. So what are 2 ways? Yeah, you can share it in the chat. You can just write it on your paper if you're like, hey, I'm working through it. We'll have some time in a few minutes where we can really work through these. A how to use our product for a specific problem. I love it. A how to. 2 ways you can share that how to. Via Twitter and email, be on website. It's a great idea. A how-to could be a video tutorial. It could be a short TikTok series. Again, I don't know the company or product, right? So I'm not saying you should get on all these channels. Pick 1 or 2. It could be a Twitter thread. It could be a LinkedIn post. It could be a graphic and you just share, the graphic and you reimagine it. So there are a lot of different options. Notice how you're not in the calendar/spreadsheet tools yet. You're not there. All you made were a bunch of lists. So right now, if all you had are a bunch of lists, if all you had before today's workshop are a bunch of lists, you're in a good place. Because the next thing that you have to do is put them in a calendar and a tool. And most of us know how to do that. We just get stuck in all the details. And we get stuck with this idea that we have to fill a calendar rather than we have to find a home for these ideas to come to life. And that's the mentality that you're now going to take on. So we're going to focus. Choose a tool, any tool. Features, cost, resources to manage it, ease of use, integration needs, template needs, all the fun things. You might use Google Spreadsheets or Google Calendar. You might use Asana. You might use Trello. You might use Todoist. Someone at some point is going to tell you that insert tool here is going to solve all your content calendar problems. I promise you it probably won't. Just pick one that works with your brain. Pick one that works with your team. Try it for at least 6 weeks. Then you can switch your tool. If you hate it the first week or 2 of you using it, don't switch your tool yet. So just start with one. Because you started with pen and paper, you can always move to a new tool, but you got to give it a chance. Tools are the number one thing that mess people up in a content calendar. You start over engineering, it gets really chaotic. So I'm curious, do you currently use one? What is it, or what are you considering using? Honestly, I use Google Spreadsheets and I've used all of those tools before, and every single time I use Google Spreadsheets. Asana to limited success, totally cool, I get it. We use Airtable, Trello, Notion. Notion's a good one. I used to use Trello, we use Airtable with clients. Google Spreadsheets, I've used Asana on Monday, Spreadsheet for the calendar, Trello for project management. That's a little bit how I look at things too, Antonio. Considering Miro. These are great. No matter what it is, glorious. If it's not working for you and you've used it for 6 weeks, switch it, test it out. This is where strategy meets execution and meets all the prep work you did, and now you have a content calendar, baby. You're going to add in your big campaigns from your scratch pad lists. If things feel empty, toss in a few evergreen pieces of content. Ready-made or net new, that means not seasonal. So for example, if you've got a seasonal business, you're focused on Valentine's Day, you've got 3 different things that you want to post about in February. It's a new product, it's a piece on surprising your significant other with the best gifts, and it's a piece on gifts for your friends, right? You'll distribute that in a couple ways. You look at your February calendar and you go, I'm only sharing something maybe 2 times a week, and I feel like I have the time to do more, and I feel like my audience wants more. Okay, well, I have this really great post on thank you gifts. Cool. You can put it in there, right? It's evergreen. It works year round. What you don't need to do is look and say, I don't have a post on Tuesday, but I have posts on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I need a post for Tuesday. You don't. Leave space for requests, surprises, and changes. My golden rule is plan 70% of whatever it is you want planned and leave 30% open. If you're wondering how much I should have planned, think about how much time you have to do content. Think about how your audience is responding. Golden rule of thumb, maybe once a week or every other week on the blog, maybe 2 to 3 times a week on social media. If you want to do more and you want to do 2 times a day on social media, cool. If you want to send a newsletter once a week instead of once a month, cool. If you can only handle once a month or once every 2 months, do that. You are not a magician. You need to work with the time and resources that you have, and you want to be realistic with yourself. Then keep it simple. So you're putting it in a calendar and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've seen the calendars and they have the templates with all these elements. You need the title, the where it's going, the type of content it is, just to keep your brain organized, the date, maybe the goal, the link to the content and the content itself, and any approvals. If you're also the approval, not necessary. If you're doing something like financial services, I worked for a finance tech company previously. We needed lots of different people to approve it. And so it was really important that we marked on the calendar, hey, this is ready to be scheduled, or hey, don't post this, but we're holding space for this later. You'll see an example of this in a Google Calendar right here. It's just a screenshot. I use the notes to describe a few details. If that's already too many details for you, cool, don't use them. Use whatever details help you stay organized with your team. I made this mistake at M1 and I had a bunch of details in a content calendar, and the team went, we don't use half of these. So we got rid of some of the details to make it faster. Here's my basic process. I organize my ideas in Google spreadsheets, mind map in Balsamiq, because it's basically like sketching on a whiteboard without learning a whole new tool. I use Google Spreadsheets or Google Calendar for the calendar view. Content gets project managed in a custom built project management tool, but maybe use Asana or Trello or something else by campaign, by week, or by category. So for example, every week there's a to-do that says, hey, make content for next week. Then I look at the calendar to see what content we planned on making, and I do that. High-level plans quarterly, then more detailed planning monthly with weekly check-ins. Every week I take a peek. Is that what we want next week? Cool. Every month, I fill out the calendar. If you do it further in advance, you're going to be so far ahead of the rest of the world, especially if you're posting on social media, that you're probably going to post about some irrelevant stuff. Then if you're on social media, or if you're using a content management tool or a newsletter, schedule your posts or send automatically. I personally also keep my to-dos in Todoist because sometimes things aren't reflected in a PM tool. Again, use whatever makes sense to you. Here's one example of a content calendar that I had used for a very small fintech, maybe 2-person content team. Both of us were part-time. We did it in Google Sheets. We planned this monthly. It was just a giant spreadsheet. And we had all of the different platforms in here. So you'll see Twitter, Instagram, and then you'll see the days. We did a list view because we didn't want to get stuck on, do I have something scheduled every day of the week? That wasn't as important. But you'll see we had the content outline, we had the caption, image link, any notes, image copy, and this is how we did it. And we did this totally async, no meetings. This is another example from M1. We had so many calendars in M1 in Asana because this was the way that we needed to operate for how our company was set up when I was there. I'm not sure if this system has stuck, but we used this pretty successfully for about 2 years. It was a larger startup, a 6-person content team. There were about 300 people in total at M1, I think, at this time. And you saw we had a lot of details and we had a lot of different calendars because we had different people approving different things. So we had our social media calendar separate than our newsletter calendar, but everything connected into one view. So again, use what works for you. Asana and tools like Airtable already have templates you can use. Otherwise, I linked to a bunch of Google Spreadsheets templates at the end. At Balsamiq, I'm starting to build this now. I'm still in the notes stage. You'll see some notes. I'm starting to play around with if we want to keep it in the Google Calendar or Google Spreadsheets, but we'll probably use one of those two things. Too many details will be way too much for your startup's content calendar. And some quick FAQs. How far in advance should you plan? We covered it, but honestly, monthly for ideas. How much should be on there? As much as you have to say and as much as people will care about. That's why we started with you writing down a list instead of you trying to fill in the days of a month. If you're going, my calendar feels really complicated, it probably is. Go back, write down your list of ideas, transfer it to a calendar, see what happens. How much time should I spend? The amount of time you have. Put it on your personal calendar to do a mini retreat in the morning or afternoon one day, an hour, 2 hours, 3, whatever you have time for. Do what you can. Questions? Do you want to share a content calendar? Do you want to build it live? This is now your time to either get help on a part of the content calendar process that you're stuck with. If you want to share a link to yours, if you want to talk through yours, or if you have a question. And it can be anything about what we just talked about. So if you're thinking, hey, I would like help solving this specific problem, or hey, I have a general follow-up question, I need this team of which you speak. You know what? Don't we all? I get that. I've done a lot of this solo. When you're doing this solo, you can really pick the tools that you want, but that's why I say mini retreat. If you call it a mini retreat, then you spend 1 or 2 hours and you just do it. If you're worried about management and you're thinking, oh man, it takes a team to manage a calendar, that's why I say start with your list of ideas and then just move them into a schedule. Don't start with, let me try to fill all the days, because you won't have time for that if you're just one person. There are some questions in the question box. How can you tell when you've over-engineered your content calendar or planning process? It's usually harder to unwind processes than to add on new ones, from Alex. That's a really good one. You can tell you've over-engineered it if you suddenly hate your life when it comes to content. Seriously, if you're dreading building your content calendar, then you've over-engineered it. If you are spending more time organizing your work than doing the work and deep thinking, like generating your ideas, moving things on the calendar, then you've over-engineered. If you have to unwind a process, if you're solo, mini retreat by yourself. If you're with a team, mini retreat with the team. A mini retreat can be an hour. I found when you call it that, it triggers something in people's brains and they realize that you really have to start pen and paper and redo the system. Don't try to back into a system that's not working. Do you keep separate calendars for each channel, or do you have one shared one for all channels? This depends on your preference. I've done it both ways. I prefer one calendar for all channels and then different colors. I am usually one of 2 or 3 people, with the exception of M1, that's working on content. So I like it to be in one view. How rigid or agile should a content calendar be? Does this differ by channel or strategy? SEO versus social. SEO is more static over time. This is where strategy comes into play. So I think SEO and content strategy work really closely together, but it kind of depends on your company and goals. So rigidity is probably more tied to events that you have to hit. For example, at M1, tax day was going to happen the day tax day was going to happen. We couldn't really adjust anything that had to do with taxes later than a certain date, because that was when people were talking about it. That was when it was going to help our customers most. When I think about something like Balsamiq, sometimes something changes. We're noticing a different trend in our customers and we want to do something sooner, and we don't need legal to approve it. We don't even have that approval process in place. Great. You want to be as flexible as you need to for your business. That's not a great answer, but it's pretty customized. And anyone's welcome to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter or social media and reach out if you want to get more specific. Can you explain mind mapping in Balsamiq? I can't. So if you draw on a piece of paper or a whiteboard some ideas and you start connecting them with circles and you start making this flow, and you're making basically this web of concepts. You're trying to figure out connections between ideas. It's not just a list. That's mind mapping. In Balsamiq, what you can do is share it with others and have a digital form. So sharing your notebook with someone that's in Texas, for example, when you're in Chicago, is a little bit tricky. But what I could do is mimic exactly what a pen or pencil does, draw some sketch boxes, lines, share how my ideas flow and connect, and send it right over to Alex if I wanted to, and now we're collaborating. How would you recommend content planning with an element of individual autonomy? We have brand messaging, but we want to encourage our team to share their own thoughts on social. We can't plan their actual posts and copy, just encourage execution. That's a great question. I would put that under an employee advocacy strategy, and that is separate. You can't content calendar your employees or teammates. You can help them figure out how to build their own social presence, and we can connect on that at a separate time, but that's totally different. You can control the channels that you own. So when it comes to encouraging others, you usually just want to make it as easy as possible and for them to understand the why. On Instagram, how do you suggest we distribute content between reels, posts, and carousels and stories? Great question. Think about what you're good at and what you can do. For example, can you do videos? Like, not are you the best videographer ever, but do you have the time, energy, and person that wants to be on camera? Cool. Reels are going to be the best way to get reach and impressions. So a lot of people seeing your content, especially people that don't already follow you. And based on how the algorithm works, reels are going to help your posts and carousels grow from the brand side too. If one reel takes you a month to make, sounds like it's not the best channel for you. And so maybe posts are the best feature on Instagram. And so maybe posts or carousels would be better in stories. But at the end of the day, try it and see what gets more likes, clicks, comments. But reels are probably the best way to grow with more people. These are good questions.
I think that's all the questions. Ariel, that was incredible. You're a great presenter.
Thank you.
I will, let's do one last call out in case anybody last minute does want to get their content calendar reviewed. Speak now or forever hold your peace. But what I liked is you framed this as a function to accomplish your goals, because I feel like a lot of people will look at something like a content calendar or a piece of software or a process as a solution and then search for the problem,
Mhm.
and not vice versa. So it's like you're solving a problem and you're using this tool to help you solve it. So I really like that framing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really easy for us to get lost in that, and people forget that this is a tool. Like, this isn't, I think a lot of people here have strategic questions, and I love that. I think people should spend more time on strategy and less time on the calendar.
I agree with that. I think a lot of the tools also, like if you just look at their templates libraries, like I've done this a couple times, you get this template that is crazy, robust, over engineered. And I'm like, I don't need any of this. Like this is so much more than I need for what I want to accomplish. So it's sometimes set up to make you think that you need all of these elements in order to be organized.
Yeah, and honestly, anytime I get a template, I delete probably at least 1/4 of the things on the template. One thing I was sharing, I think I was sharing it with you and Carissa before, is Peldi, the CEO of Balsamiq, often talks about how whatever we create, think about that as version 3, and then back yourself into a more simplified version. So if you find yourself getting overwhelmed with a template or a tool, or you feel like you've created a bunch of calendars and you've failed, whatever you create, version 3, and then simplify. It's instantly going to feel like a breath of fresh air and like you can actually handle it.
I love that mental model. We do have one more question, and I think it's kind of related to what we're talking about here. How do you find the time to evaluate all the different options for tools?
You schedule it in, and then you're realistic with yourself that honestly, you're not going to be able to evaluate every single one. You probably won't find everything that you need or everything that you're missing in a tool. And if it's important to you, it goes on your personal calendar. So I view this, whether it's content calendars, whether it's budgeting, whether it's evaluating tools, whether it's hiring people, whether it's insert anything else here, put it on your calendar like it's a meeting, like your personal one, and then it'll happen. If all you have is an hour to evaluate tools, cool. Look at some comparison pages. That's okay. My guess is at that point, you're probably not spending tens of thousands of dollars on a tool. You're probably on a smaller budget. If you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on a tool, you probably have a team that can help you with it. So feel free to delegate. Um, but there are a lot of great ones out there. And in general, I think I mentioned this. I go back to using Google Spreadsheets and Google Calendar for this all the time. I just haven't loved how some of the project management tools show the content calendar, because sometimes I have to collaborate with people that are outside of the company too. And I find it easier to share the Google spreadsheet than anything else. And then I'll manage the, hey, create content for next week in project
Mm-hmm.
tool.
Yeah, like we were talking about before we got on, like I have tried to use something like Roam Research for my note taking, and I always end up back in Apple Notes. So simplicity sometimes wins. I actually misframed that question, so there's a correction here. The question was actually how to evaluate ROI and results for, say, like different channels. So this is more of a strategic question. So like Reels
Yeah.
on Insta versus Stories versus Pinterest versus Facebook, blog, LinkedIn, etc. You've got all these options. Like how do you pick?
That's such a good question. And I really think it goes back to goals. So if your goal is to, honestly, what is all of our goal? All of our goals to probably get more customers or get our current customers to spend more money with us, right? We're businesses, that's what we're doing. If you're a nonprofit, maybe it's just for more people to hear about you, but the second part will apply to you anyway. But if you're a business, you want more people to buy from you, and you want your current people to maybe buy with you from you more. In order to do that, you have to think about, have enough people heard about you, and how do people hear about you? And if you're like, I don't know, that I might need to increase that, then you need to start boosting awareness and getting louder, right? And so that's going to be one set of metrics. If you need more people to hear about you so that they can even consider buying you, then you need to look at traffic. and impressions and reach. All of those numbers connect to how many people are seeing this thing, how many people are hearing about us. You can get that on Instagram stories and reels and Pinterest, right? You can get that on a lot of channels. If you feel like a lot of people are hearing about you, you have a lot of traffic, but not a lot of people are buying, that might be a different type of content. Honestly, you're probably going to get more people buying from you from like the paid stuff. You're not going to be able to as easily track some of the organic, but again, you still can. You might look at conversions like clicks to a certain link. You might look at it like comments. Are people engaging with you? Are they really deeply connected to your brand? A way that one company might use Reels, for example, like, has anyone seen those Stanley cups? They're kind of like these waters. They're all viral over TikTok. It might just be my TikTok. And they're
I
just
just read about these the other day, and I was made aware that they're like the new, like in tech, I feel like there's all these mimetic things that happen where like everybody's going to Mexico City now, or like everybody wore Patagonia vests before. And somebody just pointed this out as like the new tech thing. And they're like, you're going to see these all the time now that I pointed it out. And sure
yeah,
enough, like every coffee shop I go to, you see these
yeah.
everywhere.
If you're not in tech and you're like, what the heck are these two talking about? It's this giant like 40-ounce tumbler with a handle, and it holds a lot of water basically, and that's the whole thing. That strategy on Instagram to just get everybody to hear about it on Instagram Reels might look like a different type of video than if they are trying to get people to buy it, like buy it from this link, versus just sharing. And so those two things might have different goals. So if your version of success is, I want a lot of people to see this, then no matter the platform, you're going to care about seeing metrics, traffic, impressions, reach. If you care about how many people are spending a lot of time with us or buying, then you're going to care about clicks, comments, conversions. If you can get certain like tracking on it, it gets a little tricky, but with certain like UTM parameters, if you know what those are, and I know you do, Alex, sometimes people in chat may or may not, and that's cool. You can read all about those, but you can get different metrics. So it's not a one size fits all. I will say though that when I think about something like Instagram Reels versus Pinterest versus something like Twitter, they're all going to serve slightly different businesses. Like if your business is very very visual, Twitter's not even a great place to be. LinkedIn may or may not be, right? It kind of just depends on where you are. So you want to know what your goals are, and that's how you can evaluate.
There's this model that I use all the time. It's super simple. It's called Go Where the Fish Are. I'll link to it here.
Ooh.
You have to like go and do your target audience research and figure out like, are there fish in this pond? Like if I put all of my effort in and was super successful here, would I reach my target audience? And you sometimes have to do some experimentation there. Like for us, it was like maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, definitely these office hours, because it's a bunch of content nerds who sign up and
Right.
do this stuff, right? This is who we want to reach. But like we would engage on Twitter a little bit, and we're like, I don't know if this is the best place, but LinkedIn really seems to be propitious for this. So you start with some like hypotheses on your strategy, and maybe start to experiment, get early feedback, and you want to find the pond with the most fish that you are best able to capitalize on. That's kind of the model I've used. Because some like if we were on Pinterest, I mean, I don't know if we would reach directors of marketing who want to buy a content agency. You know what I mean? Like we could do the best job there, and it still probably wouldn't do anything for our business.
No, you're going to reach maybe their their team members that they manage that are working to manage their Pinterest channels for very visual, like very specific brands. But yeah, I like that. I like the Go Where the Fish Are model. I think a lot of people get stressed when it comes to, oh my gosh, I have to do audience research and then nothing's working and I've tried every channel. And sometimes it takes time and sometimes you need an outside opinion.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for this presentation. This was awesome. And I'm going to work on my own personal website content calendar after this. So now I have the tools to do so.
Nice.
All right, so closing remarks real fast. Carissa already put the link to the survey. Let us know how this webinar was. And then also the next event that we're doing is on February 7th. And it's going to be with Ashley Faust, who is the Director of Integrated Product Marketing at Atlassian. It's going to be on how to build a content playground, which is sort of a new model that disrupts the traditional content funnel, which we all know that's too simplified and linear. I did a podcast with Ashley a while back, so I don't know if we can link to that or just find it on our website, but that's a good intro as to like what kind of content will be covered. But thanks to everybody for attending, as always, and engaging, and hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.